In case it slips your memory like it did his, Joe Biden is still the current president of the United States. At least that's what we're told. But as for what we're seeing with our own eyes and hearing with our own ears, that's doubtful. Last week, Joe Biden, president of the United States, handed over a cabinet meeting to his wife, Jill, who was not the president of anything.
Today, at the top of our meeting, Jill's going to give an update on the House initiative, White House initiative to fundamentally change the approach and fund how we approach and fund women's health services. So I'd like to turn it over to Jill.
Thank you. You know, sometimes the White House surprises you. When Joe became president, I knew I wanted to keep shining a light on the issues that I'd worked on for so many years. Women's health is understudied and research is underfunded.
So I didn't vote for Joe Biden, but no one voted for Jill. No one voted for Kamala either, but that's beside the current point. Yesterday, Joe had another slip of honesty followed by a really awkward interaction. Take a look.
I thought when I got to be president, I'd get to do things that I wanted to do, but my staff tells me what I can't do, but I'm going to do it anyway. All the young women, young kids out there that are out there, come on up and do this when we stand behind me when we do this. Come on. What's your name?
Oh, this isn't funny anymore. The man is not well. He's not running the country, and we don't really know who is. It's also not Kamala. She can't even run the campaign that was literally gifted to her. Turns out she is too busy running for president to run for president.
Why? Why is she not doing more interviews to talk about her policies and answer some of the questions that voters have about her policies and on her change on her views in some of them?
Well, Jake, she's done interviews, and I know that we would love, or you would love, to see her sit down every single day with CNN and do interviews, but she's a very busy person. She's the vice president as well as a candidate.
But if she's busy being vice president, why isn't she busy fixing the country now? I mean, Tim Walz actually said it best.
It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. We can't afford 4 more years of this, and I've been saying it.
We cannot afford 4 more years of this, but Kamala literally is the this. She's also a little of this, too.
Up with education, down with deportation. Up with education, down with deportation. Up with education, down with deportation. Up with education, down with deportation.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the before Kamala. She's the new Kamala now. I personally can't wait for the time after Kamala. But joining me now to defend her entire party, a heavy task, is Democrat strategist, friend of the show, Nomiki Konst, who's always a great sport. And I can't wait to discuss the current state of the race with her. So at first, I have to ask you about that clip of Kamala, down with deportation. Is she still down with deportation, or is she going to deport anybody? What do you think?
I think that, well, first off, border security is definitely a priority of hers. It's a bipartisan issue. Bipartisan meaning both Democrats and Republicans support it. We have different solutions. Does she want to do mass deportation and knock on people's doors like Donald Trump does and round them up, which is, by the way, illegal? No, she does not want to do that. Does she want to be smart about her border policy and put pressure on countries to deal with their issues, economic issues in some cases? In other cases, it's human rights crises, but that is protected under our law. Yeah, she wants to deal with that. This is a complicated issue. But with that being said, immigration over the border has been down, drastically down since June. So some of these solutions are already taking effect. But I know it's really convenient for Donald Trump to want to continue to campaign on this. He is somebody who has made it far worse. He had bad relationships with leaders in the global South who we need to come up with these solutions together with. He painted Mexicans as the enemy, and of course, the Mexican leadership would take offense to that. You're not going to find solutions by insulting our neighbors to the south. You have to work with these countries in the south, in South America, in Central America, and in Mexico, and in the Caribbean to figure out how we can make sure that there aren't these humanitarian crises, that the criminals who are threatening a lot of folks are not threatening them anymore, and they are being dealt with within the law in those countries, so they're not coming through the border. We also have to take on the coyotes who are exploiting migrants up through Central America into Mexico, and really treating them. The humanitarian crisis is a misnomer at this point. They're treating them inhumanely. With that being said, Donald Trump's solution is to knock on the doors of many immigrants, many who are here legally in the United States, and send them where? And how is he going to do that? And what's the process? It's great rhetoric to make people mad, but the problems in America are not the fault of people who are coming across the border to look for better lives, who are taking a lot of jobs that most working Americans don't want to begin with. And they're part of our society. They're paying taxes. They're buying homes. They're making our culture rich, which is the history of the United States. So I know it's easy to blame the immigrants because Donald Trump's policies, economic policies, are about supporting the wealthy, but that's a nice distraction, but it's also a dangerous distraction, as we saw in Springfield.
Oh, well, I'm going to get to that one, but you said so much there, and boy, I don't know if the illegal immigrants are necessarily making us rich, given the fact that they're actually bankrupting communities. I mean, you've got Tren de Aragua right now that's taking over migrant shelters in New York, running guns through them, human trafficking. You've got them in El Paso. You've got them in Aurora, Colorado. And I agree with you on one point that you made. I actually don't fault the migrants for coming here, because if I was in a nation that was a bad nation, a war-torn nation, a gang-ridden nation like Haiti, I'd want to come here on a free pass too. I'd want to get flown over here under the CBP-1 app and the mass parole program. Like, I would definitely take advantage of that if I were them. I blame Joe and I blame Kamala for flying them over here and dropping them into towns like Springfield, Ohio. I'm going to play a clip from that, but I just have to ask you, and not even for you to advocate for Kamala or Joe, but just your personal feeling on it. Do you think that a town that's got 60,000 people in the Midwest can handle 20,000 people from a third world nation being plopped into the middle of their community? Like, do you think that they should be expected to take on that burden?
Well, Springfield welcomed the legal Haitian immigrants who moved to the community, some of which have been there in the United States for multiple generations. And they welcomed them because they needed to fill jobs, manufacturing jobs. And that's why the mayor of Springfield has been so aggressively opposed to what Donald Trump's rhetoric was. There's just no reality that they're not a part of the fabric of the community. They're fully integrated, as so many communities.
They're fully integrated. Nomiki, come on now. Now, I'm not going to disagree with you that there are Republicans and Democrats who love to import cheap labor. I don't disagree with you there. This is a bipartisan problem, and I have grievances with both parties for doing it. And I even think that the governor of Ohio should take some responsibility for this, because I'm sure he gets federal funding, and I'm sure the corporations love the cheap labor. So, yes, there is equal blame to be applied here. But when you say that they're integrated into the communities and the people in Springfield are all hunky-dory with this, that's not what they're telling us at the city council meetings. That's not what they told us last week at the town hall with Vivek. I want to play a clip from that, and I want to get your take on how well the Haitian migrants are integrating into the communities with their machetes.
So I have a young daughter. She's been followed around Walmart. She's been stalked. She ran to her car, threw her stuff down, ran to her car. She was chased. Okay? They were immigrants. She was chased by a man with a machete on her way to work.
If your first act of entering the country breaks the law, then you're more likely to break the law when you're already here.
So, Nomiki, I don't think that every Haitian migrant in Springfield is chasing people with machetes or eating dogs or eating cats or eating park fowl. I don't think that that's the case. That would be unfair to say. But it's also unfair to say that these instances that are happening are not happening, and tell the people that are living there that that's not their lived experience. What is your take on that?
I think it's fascinating that the Trump campaign had to weaponize Vivek and import him into that community to talk about these things with MAGA supporters, much of whom we don't know actually if they live there, if any of this was valid. Even the person who initially made the comment about the eating the pets and geese situation, that person then later said, actually, I heard it through someone else, and I now realize it wasn't correct. So, I don't know who that woman was, and I don't know who, frankly, anybody in that audience was, and if anything is fact checked, because there's a lot of characterizations of people, whether that occurred, whether it was an immigrant, whether she lives there, we don't know, and that's how disinformation spreads. Vivek, if he wanted to be an upstanding citizen, maybe he should invite some reporters to talk to citizens, because, that was a controlled environment with people that we don't know who they are and what if anything they said is true. So just like the eating the dogs and eating the cats situation, that turned out to be false and dangerous nonetheless, because it has put so many people in Springfield and around the country, Haitians in particular, Haitian Americans, at risk, because now a very inflamed base, angry base, sees them as the enemy rather than maybe the economic realities that have occurred under Republicans who just want to give tax breaks to the wealthiest and make sure that they have, like you said, cheap labor. But they don't care about immigrant labor. They want the cheap labor to be Americans. They want to get rid of unions so that Americans aren't making full wages. And then they want to point all of the problems to immigrants. And that's just not feasible.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up, I disagree with everything you just said, but I'm glad that you brought up unions, because the Teamsters union, they're not going for your girl. They're, after about 30 years of making an endorsement for a Democrat, they decided this year that they were not going to, as a union, endorse the Democrat Kamala Harris. I understand that there are localities that are doing that as part of the union, but when they took a poll of their rank and file, they had a huge percentage, around 60%, actually supporting Donald Trump, which is why they decided as a union not to make an official endorsement. Do you think that Kamala really is, and do you think the Democrat Party really is the party of the working American when one of the largest unions is telling us otherwise?
I absolutely do think so, because these localities, as you said, key localities in Wisconsin and Michigan, with hundreds of thousands of Teamsters, voted overwhelmingly in favor of Kamala Harris. So we have a leadership problem with the Teamsters. I think folks have been expressing this for a long time, and that was his decision, and it was a risky decision, and it's his job as a union leader to talk about these economic policies that benefit working people more. You look at the teachers union, you look at iron workers. I mean, you look at most of the unions in this country are supporting Kamala Harris's campaign, and that includes the largest union in the country, which is the teachers union. Well, that's because Kamala Harris's policies are to support unions, whereas Donald Trump's policies are, and his history, frankly, is anti-union.
Well, I think there's a place for unions. I'm not somebody that's a full gung-ho on unions. I don't believe in the teachers union. I believe that they do a disservice to the good teachers that are a part of their union. And I think what they did to our children during COVID is inexcusable. But that's another thing. I know that the Democrat Party loves the unions. I understand that they are a big funder of the Democrat campaign and the Democrat apparatus. So I understand that. I understand where you stand on that, and we're never going to agree on it. But I do want to talk a little bit about the performance of Kamala Harris. Now, I will go ahead and I will throw you a bone, and I will say at the debate a couple weeks ago, I was disappointed in Donald Trump's performance, not because I didn't think that he brought some truth to light. I do think he got sidetracked. I do think he took the bait. So I will give you that. I thought that, objectively speaking, she won that debate in that her rehearsed lines went over as well as they could have. But last week, Kamala sat down with Oprah Winfrey, of course, the woman of the middle class. And when she wasn't given a script, Kamala, well, we got this. Let's take a look.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family, and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that. And there are a number of ways. One is bringing down the cost of everyday necessities, including groceries.
So we're going to take the back half of that about price fixing. We'll just leave that on the side and come back to it later. But do you think the rambling about having the right to aspire to make aspirations in the current capacity that we're living in by time, do you think when she answers like that maybe she's searching for something that's just not readily available in her mind when it comes to a policy position?
What I saw her was being compassionate with these people. You know, she just heard a heartbreaking story from a family, and she was recognizing that. It's actually quite grotesque when people listen to someone break their heart, you know, someone's heartbreaking story, and then immediately pivot to policy. She used that as a moment to connect with them, to say she empathizes with them, and that her policies are going to address them. And then she moved into the policies.
But
which,
wait.
you know,
Her policies are now. If they're struggling now, that's under her. That's under her and Joe. So isn't it like a little bit weird to say everything is crap and I'm going to fix it, but I'm also currently in office, but like I'm going to really fix it when I am in office, but like right now I'm not gonna, but I will, but I haven't, but things are bad and I feel your pain because I caused it?
So like, let's look at inflation. Inflation has been going down. That's where the numbers are. Also, let's look at the stock market. The stock market is higher than it's ever been. So in a lot of ways, yeah, the Biden-Harris administration has turned around a horrible economy that came out of Donald Trump. She is going to do more. It's called yes and. We are not there yet. It takes a long time to fix the problems that the Republican Party has pushed on the working people because they prioritize big business. I mean, they prioritize defense contractors. And so they've indebted this country due to endless wars.
And Ukraine. Yeah, I know. I agree with you on that one, which is also interesting. Yeah, go
quite
for
small
it.
compared to the Iraq War and Afghanistan and 20 years there. Ukraine is about fending off a foreign adversary against all democracies. And you know, most people who understand foreign policy and national security understand that our troops not being in Ukraine actually is not a lot of money, and providing some assistance to Ukraine in light of making sure that the entire world is more stable, because Russia doesn't want to stop at Ukraine. They want to move into Poland. They want to move into all over Eastern Europe. They're already in Georgia. And that has an impact on us at home. You know, if you want to be the Republican Party of strength and democracy, then it can't just be at your own convenience when your friends and allies are making money. It has to be when we have these allies like Ukraine, or in the case with NATO, for instance, Donald Trump wants to defund NATO, get out of NATO, and basically eliminate NATO if he could. That's not good for Americans at home.
Well, they could pay their fair share. They could pay their fair share. But you have
pay actually far more now, but yes.
Do you have the same feeling about the support for Israel? Because your party is a little divided on that one. Should we be supporting our greatest ally in the Middle East strategically to fight back against terrorist organizations?
I think that the Democratic Party is actually a lot more unified on that issue than Republicans want to admit. They believe that in a two-state solution. Many believe in a two-state solution. Many believe that Israel, as a result, has a right to exist. I think universally, Democrats and many Republicans are frustrated with Netanyahu's actions, and frankly, the Israeli people. Most Israeli people don't want him in office. They recognize, and Israeli newspapers have reported, that Netanyahu is pushing this escalating things because he's so afraid that if he were not in office, he would be arrested because he was convicted of corruption. So it's a tragedy to not only the families of the hostages and Israelis, but of course to folks who've died, the 40,000 people who've died in Gaza, because Netanyahu doesn't want to lose power. And that's unfortunate. Also,
Hamas doesn't want to lose power either, and they elected a terrorist organization to represent them. And I think that they're reaping the repercussions of electing a terrorist organization to represent them.
It was as has been reported universally, that election, which was, you know, over a decade ago, was not a fair democratic election.
So then shouldn't we wipe out Hamas and wipe them out?
Netanyahu also propped up Hamas. So let's not forget that too. You know, I think, yes, Hamas is a terrorist organization. And also Netanyahu is somebody who is taking egregious actions to endanger not just the people of Palestine and babies and children and women, but also Israelis and the world order. He is escalating things to a point where we are not really understanding how the global dynamics are going to play out in the next 6 months, especially with Lebanon now and Hezbollah. So I think that's something that concerns me about Republicans right now is they're playing games, but when you want global stability, like it's better for everyone to have global stability.
Yeah, I know.
And
It's better if
the
we
way
had
that
Donald Trump in office like we did 4 years ago when we had global stability. Listen, Hezbollah, Hamas, they attacked Israel, not the other way around. They started this. There was peace, relative peace. There can never be total peace in the Middle East. But there was relative peace before Hamas and Hezbollah decided they were going to attack Israel unprovoked. And so now we've got a crisis on our hands, and Israel has to respond for its very existence. I want to get away from this because we're going to debate this all day, and it's a very long conversation. I see where you stand on it. I disagree with it, but I see where you stand. I do want to ask you if you think that the current campaign, I guess, approach to win over male voters, we know that the female voters are supporting Kamala. You know, she's got good numbers with women. But do you think that the white dudes for Harris is a good idea? And I want to play a clip from one of those white dudes for Harris and see if you think that they're making the case.
Yeah, for far too long, the left has essentially ceded white men to the MAGA right. And a thing that we know is that most men, especially most white men, aren't actually MAGA supporters. And so we decided that we wanted to create space for white men to be a part of electing Vice President Harris.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the white dudes for Harris? You think they're getting the job done?
Why not? I mean, it doesn't hurt. Listen, it is true that she's winning with women, especially women under the age of 40. And that is really inspiring to see the kind of organization on the ground and online. With that being said, also women are more likely to vote. So does she have a white male problem? No, actually, the numbers don't say that. Does Donald Trump is he really playing to white men, especially younger white men? He is. So yeah, it's great to have a space where progressive and left-leaning and never Trump white men can get together and say, this is how we want to be great allies to the next president, who just happens to also be the first woman president. I think that's great. And it shows other men how to behave as allies, because what you're seeing out of the far right, the MAGA groups online, the Logan Pauls of the world, is really toxic masculinity that is not something that we want to show our young boys. I mean, they dehumanize women, they objectify women, they mock Kamala Harris with gross sexism and talk about, her past relationship history and blow things out of proportion.
Wait. I'm going to stop you there. Why is it okay to talk about Donald Trump's history, but it's not okay to talk about Kamala's?
Because his is criminal. When he's raped people, been convicted, yeah, that's actually very serious to talk about. She wasn't.
He hasn't been convicted of
anybody.
rape, by the way. He's not convicted of rape.
But
Your E. Jean Carroll, who she fantasizes about rape on CNN, she was not convicted of rape. So that's
because we've heard the tapes, we've seen the comments, we see him on TV, how he talks about women he knows, how he's had affair. He's a predator. Okay, she's not a predator. Talking about our past relationships. Do you want to talk about your past relationships? It's not important to the conversation. But his being a predator,
then? His shouldn't
because
be
he's been a
either.
predator. He doesn't respect women, and that's important in this election. There's a reason why he's not doing well with women. Of course, it's relevant how he behaves with women. She doesn't have that problem. She doesn't have a problem of how she behaves with men or women or any community. Just Donald Trump. That's it. He doesn't get along with anybody that does not go lockstep with him. And if you dare object to Donald Trump, he puts a target on your back. Or if
do you think it's really fair to talk about putting a target on your back when the man has literally survived 2 assassination attempts? I mean, do you think that may be a little bit reckless for someone who I'm sure cares a lot about words and phrases and clauses? The man has been, under attack. He has done. Yeah. And so, I mean, talking about putting a target on someone's back.
People from his own party, let's just be very clear. By people from his own party. And those things should not happen. And that is why we have the Secret Service. And that's why we need to de-escalate our rhetoric. But you know who doesn't have the Secret Service? The immigrants who are now being targeted with hate crimes. Hate crimes. Yesterday, the FBI stated that there are more incidents of hate crimes than ever before. And that's targeting mostly minority communities, whether it's the Jewish community, which Donald Trump said
that's y'all. You guys got to own that one. That's not Republicans going out targeting. The people at Columbia who are staging an insurrection on the campus are not Republicans. I'll tell you that.
Those are not the people with. So Donald Trump literally said this past week that he's going to blame the Jews if he does not get elected president. That is horrifying.
He didn't say he's going to blame the
white
Jews.
Nationalists. He said it would be the Jews' fault.
His daughter is a Jew. His daughter is Jewish.
Which is exactly why it's even more offensive. He should have more sympathy and understanding of anti-Semitism, and instead he recklessly goes
he
out.
Also said he's also said he's gonna cut off funding for these colleges and universities who prevent Jewish students from even going to their class. I don't think we want to get into right now in the past 6 months what the Democrat far left party has been doing on college campuses and in city streets with openly supporting
white
Hamas.
Nationalists? I just find it fascinating.
I also can condemn white
Everyone
nationalists.
cares
I'm not trying
so
to. I'm
much
not trying to
about-
court their vote, but y'all really were trying to court their vote. No.
Donald Trump is absolutely trying to court white nationalist support. He has. I mean, it's almost comical that his entire campaign was built out of a movement of extreme far right white nationalists.
Wait. Are you gonna? I want you to repeat the Charlottesville lie because every Democrat has done it. So just go ahead and repeat it so that we can fact check it.
So there weren't people carrying torches and
that wasn't Donald Trump. That wasn't Donald Trump doing that. And when he's
boys, those are people who are avid supporters of Donald Trump, who repeat his rhetoric, wear MAGA hats, by the way. That video had red MAGA hats. Those guys carrying those torches in Charlottesville had red MAGA hats. So
I'm sure
just
that
don't
none of the
understand
people that wear
how
the
he can
MAGA
be
hats
so
are feds.
Yeah. I'm sure that's, then we'll say the same thing about those college campuses.
They must have been the feds. That's what it looked like.
We could play this game all day long, but if he truly supported the Jewish community, he would have never blamed them for his potential loss. That is
I think that maybe you're taking a little out of context. When you look at his actual comments, it wasn't, I'm going to blame the Jew. That's not what he said.
It's the Jewish. He said, it is their fault. If I lose, we know it'll be the Jews' fault. How can anybody defend that?
The way that he was saying it was not in that manner, because I listened to it. It wasn't in that manner, and you know it.
Well, then why is it that the Jewish community came out and immediately called it out for Anthony?
Well, you know what? If they don't like the way, that's fine if they want to come out and say, hey, that didn't sound good. Because when you read the verbatim, it doesn't sound good. But if you take it in the context of how he was saying it, it wasn't like, I'm going to blame the Jews. He said it in a way of like, we need to get the Jews out voting for Republicans because I support Israel and I support the Jewish people and I'm going to destroy the anti-Semitism on college campuses. So he was saying it in a way that wasn't, I'm going to place blame on the Jewish people. That's not the context in which he said that line.
Maybe that's what you want him to say, but that's not what he said. And if Kamala Harris had said that, it would have been rolling on TV on every network, nonstop on a loop. We barely even remember it, and it was a couple of days ago. But what it does is it makes this climate more toxic, and he really just needs to tone it down. It's the rhetoric is what's inflaming the situation. Our big attack on him is that he's a threat to democracy. His big attack on every other community puts a target on their back so that it's unsafe in their communities. It's unsafe for certain immigrants to leave their home.
Well, it's also unsafe for a lot of Americans in communities due to the gang activity and migrant crime. I mean,
what are you talking about? There is no statistical
Nomiki, what do you mean? What am I talking about? Are you denying the existence of...
The FBI literally reported yesterday. Tomi, yesterday, go read the report that violent crime is down, and it has gone down for the last several years. Hateful rhetoric now, hate crimes are up, but the violent crime is down. So I love how the Republican is like...
Nomiki, are you denying the existence of Tren de Aragua in the United States from the community?
But that's not the majority. There's always been organized crime in the United States.
Yeah, but those people were imported. Those people came across our border illegally.
They were not imported. I love how it's like they came across... Do you know how many people, majority children,
how did they get here?
Are coming over the border? Oh, do you think a 6-year-old is really organizing a massive crime network?
It's
do you
not
think a little girl?
No, how did they get here?
Great question. Ask Donald Trump, because he helped facilitate a lot of this with his border policies. And, despite the fact that he had all these cages and children separating
those
children,
were Obama's
he didn't really
cages.
seem to know. Actually, the new contracts were under were under Donald Trump's allies in the administration who got the contracts for those. You can go back and look it up on any New York Times, wherever. So there was money to be made for Donald Trump's cronies to build those cages and separate the families from their children. But Donald Trump didn't seem to care about any sort of criminal operations and do any sort of effort to target those criminal organizations.
Untrue. I was there. The Mexican government was working with the Trump administration for the first time in a long time to police their own border. That's why apprehensions were way down. I was there. I went with Border Patrol. I saw it with my very own eyes. And to blame people coming across during the Biden-Harris administration on Donald Trump,
down the Biden-Harris
because they're
administration.
flying them in, Nomiki. They're flying them into the freaking country. They had to shut down the program because it was fraud-ridden. And then about 2 months later, they restarted the program. They're bringing these people in. They're flying them in here. So yes, of course it's going down. They don't even need to cross the border anymore. They can just get an airline ticket from Biden-Harris and fly right on in. But Tren de Aragua did not come in under Donald Trump. They come across the border because of the Biden-Harris administration. That's when they came in. They're planting roots here and they are expanding. And that is the truth of the matter. So I hope that Kamala Harris has some kind of a deportation plan, because you've got to agree, we got to get rid of some of these people.
So another aspect of this, which of course Republicans never want to take into consideration, is that some of these criminal networks started, they were raised in, they're Americans who went to prison and then went back, left the country because they started organizing with these organized criminal units in prison, and then went back and organized more. It's a complicated story. As I said, there's so many layers to this. There's international politics, there's geopolitical politics, there's oil politics, there's war-torn regions. And, it's not, the Haitians are not the same as the Cubans, and Cubans are not Venezuelans. And, Guatemalans have a different story. So we can't just lump everybody together and say, oh, they're all one criminal unit. That's just not true.
Of course they're not, but there's criminal elements that are coming across our southern border.
We've got a criminal right now running for president.
Oh, boy. Okay, Nomiki. Okay. Yes, the convicted felon.
You don't take the law enforcement seriously? How many indictments does he need to have gone through? How many convictions? 30, 50, 80? At what point are you guys going to realize that the guy breaks the law, that the guy is a criminal? You care so much about crime, except when your own presidential candidate has been convicted dozens of times at this point. I just don't know at what point the MAGA right is going to see the reality that this man is a threat to national security. This man is here to destabilize our country.
You don't think, for someone who has spent the last 30 minutes talking about rhetoric and democracy, that you don't think that maybe it's a little beyond the pale for you to say that he's a threat to democracy and a threat to national security? He's destabilizing when the man has literally been targeted for assassination twice now?
By Republicans.
You think the cuckoo bird that hid with the AK-47 in the bushes at Mar-a-Lago, where the Trump golf course, was a Republican?
Supported Trump in 2016 and then felt angry because of his foreign policy decisions.
He wanted more Ukraine stuff like you. But to say he was a Trump supporter is a little wild.
He was a Trump supporter. He's said that and it's been reported. So essentially what I'm just trying to say here is, at what point are you guys going to realize this is destabilizing our country?
At what point are you guys going to stop talking about him that way? Is he going to need to get shot before you guys stop talking about him that way?
We had an attempted coup. People were storming the Capitol.
Well, the coup. You guys cooed your own man, so I don't know if you can really be talking about a coup either.
That's what a coup is. We had a vice presidential pick, and Democratic, all parties have chosen their nominees up until recently. That is not a violent situation. We are talking about police officers being killed. I just don't understand.
All right, there's no police officers were killed on January 6th. No police officers were killed on January 6th.
They died the next day because their injuries
from a pre-existing condition. Brian Sicknick died from a pre-existing condition. He did not die because of January 6th.
Where
and you know
is the reality? No, I do know this. This is bonkers that perpetuating these lies is supporting the MAGA movement right now. But at what point are people going to get out of their echo chambers and their bubbles and start to see the writing on the wall, which is, if you're pro-America, if you're a patriot, you don't want a president, Republican or Democrat or whatever, that puts the country at risk, that escalates the rhetoric, that points to everybody else but themselves when something goes wrong. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. And he sells everybody out around him. Literally, how many former Trump administration officials need to come out and say, this is what he's like. This is how he talks about people. This is how he threatens people. He wants to destabilize the world. He wants to eliminate the Department of Education.
I mean,
he wants to.
He was president for 4 years and he didn't do any of that. He didn't do any of that.
Well, he didn't staff the State Department. You know, the State Department didn't have staff and ambassadors, several, until like 4 years in. That's a major problem for national security.
Well,
how
the
is it
national
that we can have
security was
embassies without
securing
ambassadors?
for Donald Trump's presidency.
Oh, yeah.
Things were going pretty well. Then your
National
guy
security
got in there.
also includes at home. Domestic security is part of national security.
I agree. Let's close the border, Nomiki. Let's close the border. Domestic security. I agree.
So white nationalists, I agree. They're the biggest threat to America. The FBI says they're the biggest threat to our security
and you know
domestically.
what? You guys think climate change is the second biggest threat. So we're not going to agree. We see things completely differently, but I appreciate having the conversation. There are areas that we agree, I'm sure, and we found them, little nuggets here and there. Every once in a while, we agree on something. And, you know, Dick Cheney is supporting your girl. So you guys have that. Congratulations. You can have him. And, you know, I do appreciate, though, I know you're very passionate about your cause. I disagree with you on your characterization of Donald Trump. I'm sure you disagree with my characterization of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but I appreciate that you have the conversation and I appreciate the spirited discussions that we have. Thank you so much for taking the time. I will have you back soon and we will debate more and have a great day. Thank you for always doing this.
Thanks, Tommy. Take care.
All right, folks. Zelenskyy had the audacity to come into our country, a country that's handed him billions, and attack a Republican presidential ticket. Well, I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but it's time for final thoughts. We the people have given Ukraine nearly $175 billion since 2022, but it'll never be enough. And with Zelenskyy on yet another American tour, we might as well just open up our collective pocketbooks and make it rain. That's usually the protocol when he arrives here to shake us down. But this time, it's more than that. This time is even more egregious, given he was flown here on a U.S. Air Force C-17 that you paid for, all so he could go to Pennsylvania, tour ammunition factories, and essentially campaign for Kamala Harris. In an interview with The New Yorker, Zelenskyy had this to say about our election and its choices. He slams Trump, he slams his running mate, J.D. Vance, and the audacity is really something. In fact, it feels like more than audacity. It feels like foreign entities meddling in our election. It was Russia, 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 but perhaps now it's Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. How was that not an FEC violation? The Biden-Harris administration flew him into a battleground state where he trashed the GOP ticket to national media. But this should backfire because the whole Zelenskyy jig might have been cute 2 years ago, but it's nauseating for most average Americans who don't benefit from the military-industrial complex. You, as an American, can't afford milk and eggs, but you're also funding yet another endless war in a foreign country. Fun times, huh? I think it's pretty obvious that Democrats are now the war party. Hell, Kamala got the endorsement of Dick freaking Cheney, for goodness sake. Remember that. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow again, live at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes of this show on Fox Nation whenever you like. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.